All right, we're back at it. And this time, we're here in beautiful Vancouver, Canada, where we're bringing you Next Level Practice podcast episodes live from the floor of the Aesthetic Meeting 2024. This is the annual meeting of the Aesthetic Society, or the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. It's a meeting we never miss. Over these next few days, I'm going to be interviewing our clients and friends from around the industry to bring you up-to-the-minute insights on what's working and what's not when it comes to patient acquisition and practice growth. Here at Influx, we're very serious about keeping up with technological trends and studying how these changes impact the way that our clients grow their businesses. But I, for one, am a big believer that truly setting yourself apart comes down to the nuances. So let's take some time over these next few days to interview people on the ground floor of aesthetic medicine and see what we can learn from them to help you take your practice to the next level. Okay, I'm back, and I'm very proud to be joined by our good friend and client, Dr. Bradley Bengston of the Bengston Center for Aesthetic and Plastic Surgery in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Dr. Bengston, thanks so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to get to pick your brain again, and this has been really fun because we did this for the first time at the Aesthetic Meeting last year.
Yeah, down in Miami.
A little bit of a different scenery here, but absolutely gorgeous in Vancouver.
Love it here. I did a seaplane ride yesterday and kind of went up to the glacial lakes and up toward Whistler, and oh my gosh, it was really funny. When I was young, I worked in Lake of the Ozarks at a seaplane port, so kind of helping people on and off the plane, and if we were a passenger short, I got to ride a lot, so probably 1,500 trips or whatever in a couple of years. And so when I saw they were giving, seaplane rides out my, hotel window, I'm like, I got to go check that out. So took a ride yesterday. It was absolutely spectacular. Unbelievable.
It sounds magical. I used to come here a lot as a kid. My dad did a lot of work up here, and we'd always talk about it, but I've never done those seaplane rides. But I've stayed right there at the Pacific Rim and watched them just coming in, or the Pan Pacific and the Pacific Rim, both of them. There's two different hotels, and you can just see them coming in all day.
It's really cool.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I've never done it, but I have been up in northern BC, and it's some of the most beautiful country you can ever imagine. So I'm sure just even where you got to is majestic.
A lot of natural beauty.
So beautiful. Yeah. Well, so this year I've gotten to interview a few nude docs, but I'm also really interested in, sitting back down again with our clients.
Talk to an old doc?
No, well, I didn't. I meant that I haven't interviewed new in that sense.
I got you.
But that's funny. No, to do a kind of a catch-up interview. Meaning those are my first time interviewing some doctors, but now we interviewed last year, and then to kind of go, what's the update? What are you seeing? What's different? And you've had some big changes.
Yeah, it's. I am part of this really cool new Bible study in Grand Rapids, and one of the guys in the study said something. He was talking more about spiritual growth, but it just has applications to everything. And he basically told me that all growth is change, but not all change is growth.
It's really powerful, actually.
And I'm still unpacking that, man. I mean, it is like really wild. But when I think about that from a practice standpoint, the amount of growth that we have undergone and the amount of change that's accompanied that we've had to translate to our staff and that to the public, people don't know anything's any different. I mean, the great things about private equity that I think we need to spend a little bit of time about. There are a lot of misconceptions about it, so I'd like to share a little bit about that. But the ideal situation is that to the public and your patients, they should notice a difference. And it's still the same name, still the same buildings, still the same people. So from that standpoint, it's not really change to them, but the internal change and growth and things that are happening is very dramatic, kind of behind the scenes, behind the curtain. So that's really the exciting stuff for me.
I would love to unpack all of that. That quote that's really cool. I'm going to give that some thought too.
Yeah.
It's got my gears turning.
Yeah.
But obviously for our listeners back home, what you're referring to is that you partnered with a private equity backed platform within this last year, last 12 months since we last sat down here. And obviously what we talk about on this podcast is, roughly speaking, practice marketing, but it's practice growth, and all of this fits in, right? And this is potentially maybe not for everyone, and that's what I want to pick your brain on, but for some practices, it is the next logical evolution in practice growth.
Yeah.
It's here. It's happening. We're seeing it. We come across it in different ways with our various clients. And some of these platforms reaching out to us for assistance with marketing. Some of these platforms acquiring our clients, and they have some of their own marketing systems in place, or sometimes they want us to continue or help. We see so many different versions of it. But I think the main thing is it's here. It's here to stay. There's different opinions about it. We should just be talking about it openly and transparently. And I hope that what we can talk about today will help people who maybe are grappling with this or have questions about it.
Yeah, I hope so too. So I think just to start out, I think that surgeons need to have a very open mind about it. Like we were just speaking offline, we ask patients to give an informed consent, sign of informed consent, which is really informed consent is telling a patient about a procedure, about all the options, including non-surgery, what it's like, what the risks and complications are. A lot of people kind of go directly to that. But it's also like, what's the follow-up? What should I expect? And those sorts of things. When can I get back to normal activity? All those things. It really is impossible to give 100% informed consent. But the important thing is you need to be open, honest, and transparent to the patient in order to help them make the right choice for them. And the same thing applies to this. There's so many people with just closed minds that I've talked to about, or have talked to me about it. And they're like, I'm not going to sell out, or, I don't want to lose control. Well, those are just things that are just statements that are based out of ignorance. I mean, they're not honest, realistic sort of things, right? Because obviously I don't want to do either of those either, right? So there must be something to it that is beyond that. And so I think that surgeons have to keep an open mind and an open heart. I think actually we do kind of what is in our heart ultimately, and you can't sell something if you don't believe in it and those sorts of things. So I think things kind of initiate from the heart. The first two misconceptions I think that are out there are the first two that I mentioned, that I don't want to sell out, my practice and those sorts of things. I worked too hard to build it, blah, blah, blah. Well, actually, when you get into it, you're not selling anything. You're actually buying. And the way that private equity works is we interviewed, and first of all, just a plug for SkyTail. So this investment banking group, I talked to Brad Calabrese right before ASAP's last year. And I basically said, so how I started on our journey is, I'm getting, probably 10 calls a week from these private equity groups and stuff, and what are you doing with that? And so we had a long discussion. He was a little bit ahead on the path before us, but he put me in touch with Ben Hernandez at SkyTail, and you just can't navigate this process if you're going to do it on your own without a group like that. And they have been doing it a long time. We had an amazing experience with Ben and his team, kind of navigating this whole process. So they developed the SIM, which is a 70 to 95 page document about your practice. And
what does that stand for? Do you know?
SIM.
But it's essentially a kind of a prospectus of the practice.
Yes, exactly. And it includes all the financial aspects of things. It's just a really deep dive with your practice. It has outlines of all your employees, all your providers, and it's just a really, really, in-depth, kind of practice profile, basically.
Okay.
They send it out, they interview us, and they send it out to their 187 private equity groups looking at aesthetic medicine right now. And they all have different personalities in that. We got about 60 hits or interest in it, and we ended up getting about 35 letters of intent.
Wow.
So these initial offers, they call them IOIs, these initial offers, hey, we're interested in your practice and all that. We basically wind that down to about 15, and then we had 7 that we interviewed online. Like, we kind of put them in different tiers with help of SkyTail. And so not quite as strong of an offer, and so they give you what's called an enterprise value. So they work off your EBITDA, which is just like the value of your practice, kind of a standardized value of your practice. And then current valuations run from about 6 to 10x of that EBITDA. They give you a percent of that in cash and a percent in equity. So pretty common across the board, like 35% equity to 40% equity, and 60%, 65% cash for the enterprise value.
I know those equity deals can be structured in different ways. In this case, do you still retain that portion of equity in the Bengston Center, or the Bengston Center is wholly owned by a larger top co that you own then a percentage of?
Yeah, that's right.
It's converted.
The latter.
Yep.
Yeah, so every private equity group has a little bit of different setup or format. What I think you want to invest into a platform of this new entity. You don't want to keep the money in your own practice because that's limited to your own growth, and the major growth is going to happen at the platform. So
you own a piece.
So we own equity
of everybody else
else's
that they partner with as well.
Practice in the platform, yeah. And the key thing is you want to link yourself to a group that has a large backing in investors. So Varsity is the group we end up going with. They're like $2.7 billion, company. So, and all they do is healthcare. So they have a healthcare background. They've had the number one derm, ortho platforms that have sold. So they have a history of selling. One of the misconceptions is, well, nobody has sold an aesthetic platform yet, and so nobody has a track record.
Resold it, right? Because the goal is they'll
recapitalize
and sell. Event. Yeah, they'll bundle groups together, create operational efficiencies, and then sell that to a bigger player. So that's what you're saying is yet to occur.
Yet to occur in aesthetics. I'm not because it's just started. I mean, we're like in the top of the first inning, right, with aesthetic medicine, dermatology, dentistry. Some of those. We're either in the bottom of the ninth inning or the game's over, right? So that's not a really realistic way. So anyway, we got it down. We actually interviewed 8 private equity groups in 2 weeks. So we had a different group come in every other day. We had
in person
into our practice in person, their leadership. We had a meeting and gave a tour of our practice, and then went out to dinner. So it was like speed dating or something. It was really weird.
It's a lot of dinner,
very exhausting.
Yeah.
But the good part about it, I feel that we got exposed to all the top private equity platforms and stuff, and so I thought we could really make a really good decision. So the group we ended up going with, Varsity, just really they're a favorite to begin with. We really clicked. I think life's about fit and timing. You want to find a group that you really can mesh with well. The goals are the same, very synergistic. You want to go with a group that's very revenue focused, and when it comes to aesthetics, all the groups are going to be pretty revenue focused, at least the top ones. They're not really coming in and cutting things or making money by cutting people or staff or trying to make you do more surgery in a shorter period of time and all that. They're really there, hey, you're at the top of the field, very sophisticated brand practice. How can we, invest in you to make you grow more? So that's the group that you kind of want to get involved with. But the interesting thing about it is the equity portion that they're giving you. To me, it's kind of strange because the first thing is you have no idea what the value of your practice is. I mean, it's like so extraordinarily higher. My wife and I, Anna, have just been working with our heads down, and we've helped build this amazing practice, but we had no idea what the value of that is. And so
that's where SkyTail comes in to help you clarify that.
Yep, they help you clarify that. And then the private equity groups that they go and present to with you give you an enterprise value, and so that equity is going in at the same level of all their other investors. And how private equity works, It's really more like a joint venture than classic PE. They're investing all at the same level, and they would need a return of at least 3x in 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of what their expectations are. So you're kind of given that equity part of your practice, and you're investing into and buying into this platform. So, and then what really makes sense for the practice is when it does recapitalize. So that second bite, third bite, those sorts of things, that's where it's kind of generational wealth. It's like crazy money, unless you're a national professional, athlete or something. I'm not sure you can burn through that much money, So, and for me, money doesn't drive me. I mean, I want to get the best value of my practice, but that's not the most significant thing. The most significant, exciting thing to me is as soon as we signed last December, I contacted 3 or 4 practices that are like me, like us. And I'm like, I want to practice with you. I want you on our platform. So I went out and really lobbied to get Varsity to interview them. Fortunately, at least three are going to be coming online, in the next 3 to 4 months. And so it's super exciting. So the coolest thing to me is that now I'm going to be able to practice with my colleagues that already were doing best practices with. I have a number of these guys on speed dial, and we do things in practice at a level that's different just by the way our practice is. It's very concierge focused, very unique. And so now it's just going to incorporate all that together. And so we're going to have the ability for, probably 40 or more of the top plastic surgeons on the same team, in the same practice, and integrating together educationally and patient-focused and all that. And then you have integration with the CEO, CFO. We'll have probably 60 injectors, aesthetic experts, so they're interacting and learning, estheticians. That to me, that's like the most exciting thing to me. And then the third thing, I think the biggest advantage is I cannot tell you how many soccer games, basketball games, it's not wasted, but spent time in our office after hours talking about which 401k program we should go with and what healthcare program should we go with and high-level HR issues or legal issues, those sorts of things. Within 6 weeks, those were all gone, and we've joined now the synergies that you gain with such a bigger group. Our healthcare is the best healthcare plan we've ever had. And it's immediate. And our 401k investment, 100% matching, 4%, matching. So much better level for our staff than we could ever achieve on our own. And it allows the surgeons to not have to worry about that anymore. So now our focus is all on strategy. Like, okay, how are we going to do this build out upstairs? We're going to get 7 new treatment rooms, and our hair restoration center is moving upstairs. We need to go out and hire more providers to fill those rooms. So it allows us to really focus, and it gives us revenue to possibly accomplish what we could have done on our own, but just more efficiently. And again, the ability just to do best practices with all my friends, but all these really top quality plastic surgery practices out there, it's just going to be incredible. And so those are the most exciting, aspects of it. I think at the essence, if you can find a private equity group that can accomplish all those things for you, that's revenue growth driven and not kind of going in to mess with your mojo a little bit, cut staff or anything like that, I think you'll really see the value. So
those are all at least similar or common themes that I've heard talking to people who've partnered with clients of ours and people around the industry who've partnered and are happy with that partnership.
Yeah.
But one that I've been recently hearing a little bit more with the platforms that are focused on putting together surgical practices is that thing about being able to partner with your colleagues.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to someone else who was very excited about this fact they had a colleague across the country and they feel like they have this, 1 + 1 = 10 effect of And that's why we're here at the Aesthetic Society meeting in the first place, right? It's supporting each other as colleagues.
Right.
But you can do it in a whole nother way. And they were just really fired up about the synergies and the educational programs they're going to put together and the sharing and the cross-pollination of the collective years in practice between all of them. So that's I think it's a little bit overlooked as a value proposition.
It's really going to be, I think, at the end of the day, the main value, right? You do get cost savings and things like that to just by the number of size of the group. You get better pricing for different toxins and all that stuff. But to actually have a summit, we'll have a meeting, it'll be probably larger than a lot of national, or regional meetings or state meetings. We'll have potentially 10 plastic surgery practices with maybe 60 doctors and, probably 400 or 500 employees, right? So it's, and when you have that, the Allergans and Galdermas, and they're sending everybody in. We were already talking to Chris Zurich about doing a cadaver lab and bringing in the national, international trainers and, and just all those things that I think are just really, it's just kind of a picture or vision for me for plastic surgery 2.0. This is, and from where I am in my practice now, 5-6 years to go. One of my best friends is a pastor, and he always tells me, if you want to hear God laugh, make plans. So everything's God willing, but but just the next 5 years of my career, I think, could be the most exciting. Just with teaching, just leaving a legacy for plastic surgery, the things that I do well, and learning from people that do other things well. To me, that's the most exciting.
It does sound exciting. And the plastic surgery 2.0, I like that framing. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a merging of the minds, and it's maybe more of a talent pooling play than of course it is talent acquisition.
Yeah.
You and your group and everything you built. But I didn't really think about kind of the mind share or the brain trust that's created, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That's created, and that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Again, there's these various society meetings. I know that you all and your colleagues come here to learn from each other, but I think there's inherently a little bit at a certain point like walls that go up in sharing.
Yeah. Right.
And it's funny that could be the weakness that gets broken down by grouping together. Not entirely. There'll be different walls that are built, but in terms of people will then be cooking up their own secret sauce of how to do things better.
Right.
But within a larger group sharing together, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Will you share what you mean when you say just a little bit more when you say revenue focus? It sounds like you're saying top line revenue focus rather than meddling. Obviously the group you're partnered with, you said it's Varsity, and the platform it's called
United Aesthetics Alliance, so UAA. Yeah. So
obviously they care about what comes out the bottom, but is it that they're more top line growth right now focused, or what do you mean when you say revenue focused?
Yeah. So I think, for instance, there's a couple ways that you can increase revenue for a company, right? And I think the cool thing about aesthetics is it's typically cash pay, so there's very little, if any, insurance-based. If you're an insurance-based physician, really the only way you can make money, you can try and charge more, but the insurance companies and the hospitals are going to limit and dampen that down, so you don't have that option. So you can see more patients in the same time, but now you have all these paperwork initiatives, things that you have to do and comply to, and they're going to give you only a limited number of staff to help you accomplish that. So it's really hard to drive more patients through to become more efficient or to make more revenue. So you're really limited. You can grow, you can add physicians and stuff, and that way is probably the most effective way. But there are limits on who you can acquire and bring in, right? Because their salaries are capped or limited and stuff. So when you're an insurance-based practice, you have all these different limitations. When you're a cash pay, practice, and every PE group, as I said before, has a personality. Some are very med spa focused. The one that we're on is high-end, sophisticated plastic surgery practices with med spas. I think that actually is a better practice model. I personally think that med spas only are going to be kind of winding down and not quite as valuable as they have been, because medical legally there's all these new lawsuits and stuff happening where these things are happening at med spas that are not controlled and are not associated with a doctor, right? So you're not really sure what product you're getting, how much the dilution is, if there's a complication. I mean, the majority of aesthetic medicine goes really well, right? But if you put the filler in an artery, that's going to be a disaster, and there's a lot of high-profile cases and stuff. In our practice, we have 2, soon to be 3 physicians there 24/7. Every patient that's there is coming in, and there's a plastic surgeon there, multiple, you know. So if there is a complication, we have protocols and processes where it starts immediately, and most of the time you can mitigate against those complications so it's not as bad as it's going to be. A lot of these med spas, some states, California, they're basically passing laws where you don't even need to have a medical director. Well, I mean, I think that just from a safety standpoint is not the best for patients. And then the other thing with med spas, they really don't develop a brand and sophisticated brand. The main thing they compete upon is cost. And so
that's where it's all going.
Results in the
I agree.
commoditization of things and that. So, you know, I just don't think that's the best model. I think our model's a little bit better, and I think with that, the value of high-end aesthetic surgery practices that have a surgical component and a med spa component are going to have the greatest value. And I think that is yet to be seen. I think that multiple actually is going to be more 8 to 10, you know, versus some of the other like derm, you know, and other med derm and stuff, dentistry, you know, insurance-based practices being more in the 3 to 5, you know, sort of range. So we'll see.
I've come across a lot of the challenges with some of these platforms, and I would agree that they're experiencing, and they're talking to us from a marketing perspective, and I would agree that the only surgery and the only med spa has some inherent weaknesses, and I would say the strongest, but you have to be built for it.
Right.
And some platforms are and some aren't. Would be the strongest would be the dual component of non-surgical and surgical, for all kinds of reasons that I could unpack, but short statement I'll make now is, from my perspective, not that I'm super qualified, but I'm qualified to have an opinion, and I'd have strong opinions about all of this, and I see that does seem to be, I believe that's who will win.
Yeah,
I do believe that's who will win in the recapitalization phase.
Yeah.
So when we talk about revenue focus, I guess what you're saying is more thinking about being growth-minded is maybe the term I would use. And not to say that they don't want to be smart about the balance sheet, but it's because we do see some, and I have seen them, and I believe it is a mistake, that are thinking the best way for us to affect the bottom line is to come in and slash and tweak and optimize.
Right.
And there are optimizations to be made,
Sure.
don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But also, what are we doing to grow at the top line while optimizing,
Yeah.
instead of seeing the only opportunity to be in the optimization
Right.
of that balance sheet, which is where maybe some of your colleagues have said, I don't want to, you know, it's going to turn into a disaster, as they've heard those stories of people too focused on cuts as the only way to rise.
Right.
To
And I think the other focus on cuts, and even the focus on growth, you can't lose the focus being on the patient. You're focused on the patient, you know, and trying to provide top-tier technologies and ultimately experiences and outcomes. That's what it's all about. And then I think everything else comes. If your focus is on a dollar, or, you know, or cutting to make money or whatever, you're going to miss it. You're going to lose it. But saying that, you know, if your focus is on really high quality education and outcomes and technologies in that, we found that when you open up, we're getting ready to open up 7 treatment rooms in 3 months, because we've had to reformat our practice to allow for Nargis to come in to see patients. So we're going to be seeing dual patients, you know, at the same time, that we've never done before, because Dr. Alfonso and I have opposite schedules. So I'm in surgery, he's in clinic, right? So now we have to we're going to have more double OR days, which is going to dramatically increase our revenues, right? We have a new surgeon. That's the best way to increase your revenue. And now in clinic, we need to see patients, at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so now we have to move our current non-surgical rooms to another space. So fortunately, a space opened upstairs. My wife's not too happy. We're sticking her in the basement, instead of her beautiful marketing office and stuff like that. But we're converting and gaining 7 treatment rooms and moving our hair restoration upstairs.
Wow.
It's probably, once those rooms get going, lasers, it's probably $1 million per room annually. So that's the growth that they're talking about. And bringing in med spas, the concept is not having a med spa, buying another med spa, buying another med spa. Our model is we have the hub of the Bengston Center, and our main current med spa is in our space because we have space where we have 26,000 square feet or whatever.
Wow.
So, but we're looking at other med spas in the region, on the lake shore, stuff like that, that can be, feeders and hubs for med spas for our practice. That's going to have the same quality of education and quality of aesthetic providers, injectors and stuff out there. So you're building revenue by de novo and acquisition of different med spas that are in your region, so you're extending your reach. So that, I think, is the best way to grow revenue and, patients and happy patients and all that.
So first, your focus on making sure that you don't get too caught up either which way in the almighty dollar, because of course at the end of the day there is a financial transaction and exchange happening here, but not getting so caught up such that you're forgetting the patient. I think that's strong. It's been a strong theme with each of the surgeons that I've sat here with here at the meeting, is that we just need to always come back to that. And it's overly simplistic maybe, but it's just cannot be. It isn't. Yeah. It cannot be forgotten.
It has to be the focus.
And I think that's always the foundation for successful businesses and practices that I see, is that they truly, genuinely keep that in focus.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point. That was a perfect illustration of strategic, growth-minded planning versus only sort of thinking about how can we corral and keep in what we got versus how do we put it back in for strategic growth. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
I had a few other things I wanted to pick your brain on, but we're running long, so I'll keep it to one last thing here. Okay. But it still relates to this PE part, because I think we delved into this a bit, but I think it's fantastic, because I think this is what people are thinking about and wanting to hear about, and you're obviously someone whose point of view I think has a lot of weight to it, and I think it'll be very helpful for your colleagues to hear all this. I have a theory and a thought about all this that I want to ask you. Yeah. So we talked at the beginning about some of the sour taste that people have. I don't want to lose control. I don't want to sell out. There are some groups that I think have done it wrong, and I've come across their paths in the PE roll-up, or whatever you want to call it, the PE-backed groups, platforms. However, I think to some degree, some of the disappointment that people have had has more to do with not partnering with the right group for them. Yeah. And I'm curious. I think that I don't know what percentage that accounts for, but I think it's a higher degree than most people really take into view. And it goes back to what you said in the beginning of really understanding and the due diligence you did back the other way. I just heard someone on stage. We were at AIS, the Aesthetic Innovation Summit, a few days ago, just before this meeting started, and someone on the M&A panel said, you don't do enough due diligence back the other way. Sometimes they don't see the potential, the practice who is potentially going to be acquired, doing their own due diligence back enough. They're just looking at the dollar amount. And I think you might have even told me that, we had a conversation. I don't want to misquote you, so I'll let you tell me that, the dollar was not the dollar amount of the offer was not your ultimate decision. It was about finding the right group.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what leads to a lot of this disappointment. Would you agree now that you've gone through this?
I totally agree. I think that, and one of the coolest things about SkyTail and why I think they're so highly ethical and their approach to things is right, is they're like, we're not going to dictate or encourage you to go with a certain group, and certainly not the group maybe that's the best financial offer for you. We want to find the best fit for you. And so we spend a lot of time with you, getting to know you, and trying to match you up with those best fit. So it just worked out that the group that we liked the best was the highest valuation, so it was a double winner. But, I think it's so important because you need to really be focused, and you really have to almost be up in the corner looking at yourself really honestly. I tell patients this sometimes, where you can get lost if you're trying to decide between a mini and a full abdominoplasty. You have to be open and honest with yourself. What really bothers me, right? So if it is just a little bit of skin underneath your belly button, then we do a mini and you'll be happy. But if it really is more skin and fat above the belly button and we just do a mini, you're not going to be happy. So you have to be super honest with yourself and transparent. What do I really want? What's really important to me? Because otherwise you can really get lost. And so I do think that's really, really important. I think the whole control thing, though, you do become an employee again, which is kind of weird, but things really haven't changed. And the only change really is, instead of me coming to David and say, hey, I just got back from Vancouver, I want to buy a new laser. I think we need a new laser. Our estheticians and providers need something else in their toolbox. I met with the guys. This is the ROI on it. We should have it paid off in 3 to 4 months. We do some other due diligence and we make a decision. Now the only difference is we bring Varsity into it. We have to present it to them to say, hey, there's this brand new laser out. It's like so fast, this new Cyton BBL. It's like amazing, right? So we have to get it, because we have the bandwidth for it, the speed up, more ROIs, shorter times, all that. And so we have to get them to sign off on it because ultimately it's their practice now. But as we grow, it's a lot easier because it's like, hey, Edina had plastic surgery, the other group on our platform has that, does this, and it's a lot easier, because they can look at that. So it's a fascinating process. My big takeaways are, you can't do this alone unless there's some groups that are coming to me saying, okay, you've done all the due diligence. I really trust you and your evaluations and stuff. I kind of want to miss all that, skip that level, and so just let me talk to Varsity and go that route. So that is one option, but if you're really wanting to go through the process for yourself, you really need to get a great IB team together with you to do it. So.
Well, it sounds like you did it right.
Yeah.
And you found the
Super
right
happy.
group for you.
Yep.
And you said earlier fit and timing.
Fit
and I
and
know
timing.
from talking to a few other clients who entertained this or gone forward with a partnership that timing was also important. So at a different point in your career, a different group might be the right fit. Depends on
Just
where you're at.
one real quick comment. I know we're running over a little bit, but the timing thing is really important because I'm talking to a lot of people now that are finding out, hey, understand you did this, and those things. So a lot of people are saying, I'm going to build my practice more. I need to hire another surgeon. I want to build my med spa. So I'll build my EBITDA and then I'll be ready to do it. The counter to that is I personally believe PE is gaining so much strength and momentum that the top 200 plastic surgery practices are going to be on a PE platform in the next 18 to 24 months.
Wow.
That's what I believe.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit longer than that. But the counter to, okay, I need to get my house in order to maximize, my EBITDA and the money offer, is that as time goes on, you kind of want to get on board as you're reaching the apex of things, not on the downside, because the valuations are going to start going down at some point. And so you have to counter that a little bit. And there's some ways to do that with earnouts and those sorts of things that if you're not quite ready yet, but hey, a year from now, I think my practice will be have a higher EBITDA, so why don't you give me an earnout for that next year? So
in other words, you can calculate in those expectations or give yourself ways to hit certain marks
Yes.
and be rewarded for the growth you're already intending.
Right,
So don't have to
exactly.
wait.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to think about that. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. So
Sure.
you got to
Sure.
think about that. So
Well, there's some great thoughts. We could pick your brain for hours, but
Yeah.
if any of your colleagues are kind of considering this sort of thing, should they reach out to you? Would you be open to that?
Absolutely. Happy to chat anytime.
Maybe
Yeah.
just go to the Bengston Center website and they can find you. Or just reach out to you.
Call you.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
give me
Call us or
give me my
Adam.
cell phone.
Okay,
Give me
beautiful.
my cell phone. Yeah.
And do you mind if I ask you, how many years have you been in private practice?
So 29 years.
Wow.
29 years. So pretty crazy. Wow. Just learned unbelievable things. Unbelievable ride from totally divesting our 401ks, my wife and I, to keep our practice going in 2008. And then our practice continuing to grow. It's just been an amazing ride, and just God's grace and an unbelievable amount of hard work. So it's been wonderful.
I appreciate you sharing insights from those 29 years of hard work with us here. I wanted to ask you some other things about, this event you do every year, but we did talk about it last year, and I think I've seen a few other practices do this event, this kind of annual patient, you call it All That Glows, this patient appreciation event.
Yeah.
If you don't know about it, you should listen to the episode we did with Dr. Bengston last year and hear what he does.
Yeah.
I think it's really unique, and you said it's some large percentage of your annual revenue made in 1 week, right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So September 19th, I think this year, All That Glows. We have all the vendors. We do a lot of demonstrations. Best deals, and all that stuff for patients. But it's really turned out to be, I think we had 1,500 people there last year in about 6 hours. So it's just a lot of fun, a lot of energy, and just a really fun day.
I want to come. I need to check my
need to
calendar and
come.
consult my wife before before I commit on air. No, I really, really want to come.
Yeah.
I love that it's so focused on education and
Yeah.
from education. And if you listen to last year's interview, that's what I took away from it, is that from education, the sales and the patients will come in, but you focus on education.
Yeah.
People bring their friends who have been considerers for a long time. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And as a marketer, I just go, that's such
So
a
fun.
unique idea,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of work in a condensed period of time.
Yeah.
I know you must put in so much work, you and your wife.
Yeah. It's
to
like
do
7
this.
weddings, my wife says, all
I
at once.
absolutely
Yeah.
believe that.
Yeah.
So I want to come, and I encourage people to go back and listen to
Hope
that.
you can make it.
Yes, but Dr. Bengston, I don't want to keep you from the meeting any longer. We
Yeah.
went a little longer than I thought,
No
but
problem.
really valuable insights.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
You
sharing.
bet. My pleasure.
Take care now.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
You bet.